Hey everybody, I am CJ Maurer with Complete Payroll, and I want to welcome you to our inaugural episode of our new video series called PeopleWork. PeopleWork is a series where we interview various experts in a variety of human capital management fields. And really what we're looking to do is just have open conversations into interesting subjects, latest trends, news, labor law, whatever is going on and whatever we think is relevant to a lot of people. If you haven't seen our disclaimer, one of the things that is important for us to establish is we're not here to endorse any particular product or service or organization. What we want to do is expand access to ideas and news and insight and analysis to anybody within the human capital management industry, anybody who essentially their job is taking care of and managing people. So payroll, HR, benefits, insurance, labor law, all these other things. And I am pleased to introduce our guest, Kristine Theodorakis from Bond Financial Network. Kristine is here to talk about paid family leave. And what I think is really interesting about paid family leave is that as an industry, we've spent a lot of time focusing on it, specifically in 2017, and specifically on the employer side, because as we all know, the law came into effect January 1st this year. So there was a lot of work that employers needed to do in order to prepare for the go live, if you will, of this law. But now it's a law and the dust is settled. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, there's nothing left to do to be mindful or be mindful of or adhere to this law. So we're very excited to have Kristine on, who is an expert in paid family leave, among other things. So welcome, Kristine. We're really happy to have you.
Thank you, CJ. It's always a good moment to partner with Complete Payroll.
Did I sell you short or anything? Is there anything else
No,
you think is
I
important?
think we're done. You covered it all. So thank
Okay.
you.
Well, all right. So before we get into it,
Yeah.
there may be people watching who aren't really sure what paid family leave is and or how it might be relevant to them. So do you want to kind of take a minute and explain that?
Yeah, of course. So like you said, it just came into effect. We're talking a couple months into 2018, but we started hearing about it last spring in 2017. The law was passed in or around April 2017, but it went into effect this past January 1, 2018. And a lot of people really don't have their arms around it yet, and that's okay. So this is a good moment to help them with that. So from the employee perspective, it's something that's available to all New Yorkers, anybody working in New York State. And it's a program that's meant to give them time away from work when they're bonding with a new child, when a family member has a chronic illness and they're helping support that situation, or when there's military exigency.
And so how do the benefits work? So if those are qualifying events, how can somebody take leave? How do they get paid? How does that whole thing work?
Sure. So it's a system that's going to be controlled by an insurance plan. So it's a moment in between the employer and the employee where the employee is going to know, they might think that they're going to take a PFL leave, and we'll get into the specifics of what they are. They'll seek out the employer for the information, and then the employer will give them the claims paperwork, and the employee has to go through the exercise of filling out the claims paperwork, getting the insurance carrier the required supporting documentation, and there can be a lot to that, and submitting it to the insurance carrier. So the overall view of it is it's different than New York State statutory disability. You are going to take DBL if something is going on with you, that's, for yourself. But PFL, paid family leave, is essentially when you're dealing with something with your family. So if that's a family member that is sick with a chronic illness, something that can be proven, doctors are going to be involved, statements are going to be signed. If there's a new baby or a new foster placement or adoption, you can take time to bond with the new child. Or military exigency. It's someone is being deployed. There's graduation. There's an event. There's time needed for counseling, things of that nature, you can apply for paid family leave, and you can get up to 8 weeks off this year in 2018. And while you're off, the main differentiator of this is your job is held, you get paid to a certain amount, and your benefits that are in place, let's say you have medical, dental, vision from that employer, they have to remain in place while you're away on paid family leave. So it's something that the employers need to be mindful of and educate the employees on, which is what you and I are doing right now, because there's a lot to it, and people need to understand that even though it's a big landscape and there's many ins and outs to it, it's meant to be a positive thing for New Yorkers to help in situations that are really changing their life. And sometimes let's just step back and think about why. Why is this happening? The majority of the workforce will soon be the younger generation, millennials, and there is a desire for more of a work-life balance. There's also a need for there to be a better paternity benefit in the United States of America. So that's one of the reasons why New York State has made PFL a thing.
So you talked about how employees can get paid. We talked about qualifying events, with bonding with a newborn child, caring for a seriously ill relative, or military exigency. And they can take up to 8 weeks, job protected, maintain their benefits.
Right.
Then you mentioned they can get paid. How does that work?
Sure. So it's 50% of their wage in 2018. PFL will be phased in over 4 years' time. So when we get to 2021, it'll be 67% of a person's wage. But that's not everybody's wage. There has to be some caps on things, the max benefit amount. So let's just focus on 2018. It's based off of the average New York State weekly wage, which is $1,305.92. So just to summarize that, it maxes out at somebody making $67,000. So they get a 50% of that, of the average New York State weekly wage. So if somebody took PFL, I take PFL today, the most I can get is about $130 today for taking PFL.
Okay, that makes sense. So 50% of your salary up to the state average. So if you make more than $1,300 a week, you're still only capped at making 50% of that.
Exactly. A lot of people don't understand that, so that's important.
But as I understand it too, you don't necessarily have to take it all, like you don't have to take 8 weeks consecutively, right? You can kind of break it up. How does that work?
Yep. So you can break it up intermittent, and it's really going to be based off of how the claim is approved. And that's something that's important too. This isn't where you're going to your employer and they're saying, yes, no, you can do this. And employers need to understand that too. The insurance company makes the decision if they are going to approve or deny the claim. So within that claim paperwork that the employee is going to submit, they will state if it's going to be consecutively those 8 weeks, or if they're going to do intermittent days for the paid time off. It has to be approved as such. And you're right, it doesn't have to be, straight 8 weeks. Now, if somebody's like, well, I only need an hour on Wednesdays, it doesn't matter. That hour counts as a full day for PFL.
Right. And isn't it true that FMLA can be taken in hourly increments, or am I getting that mixed up with something else?
15-minute increments. And
15-minute increments.
Yeah, and we should step back on that. So FMLA is for larger employers. 50 or more is when we're talking in this world of leave for FMLA. That's when that comes into a play. So a lot of small employer groups don't think that they have to worry about PFL because they don't have to worry about FMLA. Those larger groups, but PFL is for any employer, private sector employer that has at least one employee. Okay. And it gets very detailed when you can take things together, when they dovetail with different disability benefits. And I would say an employer and employee wants to talk to their broker. We help our clients understand that. That would be too much for this. But yeah, absolutely. There are other leaves that come into play, and they can piggyback on each other or happen at the same time.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. And we've experienced that on the payroll end. We've gotten emails from clients who have, because we've emailed our clients on obviously on the payroll side, wanting to help them set up their payroll deduction. And we should talk about that in a second, right? How this whole thing is funded.
Yeah.
Um, but and they've been and these small businesses have said, we've been advised that we don't have to do this because we don't qualify for FMLA,
Right.
so we don't need to worry
Mhm.
about paid family leave in New York State, which obviously is not true. FMLA only applies to employers with 50 employees or more, and
Mhm.
as you just said, paid family leave is one employee, and
Yeah.
you have to comply with it. So that's I'm really glad you mentioned that. That's a really important thing that as a new law, you can't expect everybody to just know that or assume that. I mean,
Right.
hopefully in the coming months and years, everybody's going to familiarize themselves with it and understand what they need to do.
Sure.
But as it's just beginning to roll out, it kind of does make sense why not everybody would totally understand it or expect that they have to comply. But anyways, I just brought up something interesting about I use the term payroll deduction for
Mhm.
paid family leave. Talk about how this whole policy is funded and what this means for employers and employees.
Sure. So who funds the benefit? When it was first rolled out, Governor Cuomo said employers won't have to pay anything for this. Don't worry about it. Um, and we all chuckle about that because as an employer, you may not be paying for paid family leave itself, but there's a lot that goes into it that costs you money. You have to understand the benefit. You have to educate accordingly. And regardless of how people feel about things politically, it's all about the education. If you understand it well, and if you educate the employees to understand it, everybody can really reap the benefit of what it's meant to do for New York State employees. So in terms of funding it, the employer has to do a lot on the back end to work with somebody like me and ask their questions and make sure that they're compliant in giving the proper information to the employee because it could cost them money for non-compliance if they don't give the claim paperwork at the right time, if they don't fill out things in the right time frame, or if they discriminate when it comes to PFL. So, that is very true. But let's just talk about who pays for this. So when it started
Yeah.
in January, the employees do, all of us, full-time, part-time, full-time and part-time employees are eligible. And all of us started paying into it. So Complete Payroll started doing deductions. Some started in 2017, depending on how an employer pays their New York State statutory disability bill, because now PFL is a part of that bill.
Hmm.
So to make it real, an employee making about $41,000 a year, they'll pay about $1 a week for paid family leave. It's a percentage of their payroll, 0.126% for this year in 2018. No employee will pay more than $85.56 for PFL in 2018. But if you make less than a certain amount, and that percentage, that 0.126%, you may not be paying the full 85.56. But again, no one will pay more than that in 2018 for paid family leave. So if you think about the max benefit of it, if you're paying, okay, the most I can pay is $85, the max benefit is about $5,000. So you're paying very little to get kind of a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
people have said, how is that going to work? So for 2018, the rate is understood and what the cost is, it's community rated. And what that means for people that don't deal with insurance every day, the state sets the rate. We're all in the same pool. The rate is the rate. It doesn't matter if you have one employee or thousands of employees. We're all focused on that 0.126% of payroll and doing the deductions with the payroll company from there. Next year, I don't know, depending on utilization of the plan, the state could say we need to adjust this percentage of what people are paying for it. But we can worry about that next year. We'll probably know more about that in the late summertime when they look back on the utilization. There's other states that have had this type of leave for longer than New York has, California, New Jersey, Rhode Island. Now their leave is different from ours. There's different weeks involved. There's different percentages. There's different costs, but we're all kind of the same. New York State has the most comprehensive PFL program, but in the other states, the most that PFL is used for is for bonding, about 80 to 85%. So that's what New York is planning as well. But utilization of the benefit depends on what the benefit costs over time. That's the same thing with like medical insurance, as an example. So to wrap up what it costs, it's about $1 a week, no more than $85.56 for the year in 2018 per employee.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. And so one thing that I wanted to make sure is that when you say 0.126, that is to be clear, that is 0.21%. That is not 0.126 as in 12.6%.
Right, right.
But basically a fraction of 1% of your salary, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And so what you were also talking about was really interesting to me. So you're saying how basically the most an employee will be forced to pay into this benefit, because essentially it's like an insurance policy, right? And so when the deduction comes out of your paycheck and it's like $1 something a week at max, and ultimately it ends up being a maximum of essentially a premium of $85 a year with a potential benefit of over $5,000. We're really talking about what you pay for the premium versus what you can get out of it in terms of the benefit. And it'll be really interesting. I really like that you brought it up. You're essentially talking about the solvency of the program, right? Like ultimately, are there going to be enough people to pay into it? Because when you look at 85 versus 5,000, you think, man, that's really tremendous upside. You think if everybody who has kids, moms and dads, take paid family leave to bond with their children, are there going to be enough people paying into it in order to fund the benefit? Do you by any chance know how that has played out in other states, if they've had to make adjustments and things like that?
There's data out there that we can look into, and really we've only talked about the utilization part of it, the 80 to 85%, and that everybody has a different type of plan. So you're never comparing apples to apples. But to go back to what you said about who's paying into it, parents, things of that nature, every New York State employee that's deemed part-time or full-time. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
So someone might say, I'll never use this. I don't want it. How can I waive out of it? Well, you can't, because we're all eligible. So that's the thought. All these people are paying in, but only a small population is going to use it. And I shouldn't say small. We don't know that, but that's the thought. Any part-time or full-time employee is eligible. So let me talk about that in terms of eligibility.
Small relative to the amount of people who are paying into it.
Right. Everybody, some people don't even realize they've been paying for this for a couple months.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Every week they're paying for it, and they may not even realize it. And people don't realize it yet, probably because it's only $85.56. But we are aware that is still a cost to employees, that it maybe they will use the benefit, maybe they won't. Either way, it's something that we all need to be aware of, that we're paying for. So in terms of a full-time employee, you can't work for an employer, use PFL, jump to another employer, use PFL right away. You have to meet the eligibility period. So for full-time employees, it's 26 weeks. You have to be working full-time for an employer for 26 weeks to be eligible for PFL, so that's a good thing to have those rules in place. There's lots of rules, CJ. We could talk about it all day if we needed to. For part-time employees, they're deemed eligible, even part-time. People think, no, not the part-time, just like they think, no, I'm a small employer. No, part-time are eligible if they've worked 175 days for that employer. Okay. So let
me ask you this. I'm sorry to cut you off. Is it 175 days on the job, or having worked for that company for 175 days?
Good question. Actual days worked. And what's important there too is it's in a 52-week period. So if a part-time employee has not worked 175 days in a 52-week period, they can waive. If a full-time employee hasn't worked 26 weeks in a 52-week period, they can waive. It'll be few and far in between. It depends on the industry, right? Employer groups know when they have a quote unquote seasonal employee, and when they're going to want them, or that employee is going to want to sign that waiver. Now, what if they are typically not working that much time. We just assume they waive out. You need to track this. You need to track the people that you're unsure of, that you deem to be part-time and that you think are working less than 175 days. You can't think and just say, I think we're good here. You have to know. It has to be tracked. Bond has a system, BTA, Bond Total Access, where we help employers track it there. Payroll companies, Complete Payroll is going to have a system where you can track PFL, and people are already probably tracking things like FMLA if they're larger.
Sure.
But you need to have a system in place to track. And some people say, well, I'll do it in a spreadsheet. Okay, that sounds fun. You can do that, but you should have a system in place because employees may fluctuate. And if they've signed a waiver, then we need to readdress, when they are eligible. I don't think it will affect as many people, but there are some employer groups that may be listening to this that are like, oh God, that's going to affect me a lot. And we can help with that. You need to know when it's proper and the right time to give that waiver out and have it signed.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I definitely want to get into a little bit more about how you guys Bond can help employees on this side. But before I do that, I have a couple of questions. First of all, it, it is pretty clear to see how the average employee would would benefit from this, because up and before January 1st of this year, there was no paid leave for bonding with a child, for caring for a sick relative or military exigency. So it's clear to see. I mean, I know some people. I myself am one of those people actually who is expecting a child in 2018 and plan to take paid family leave. So you know, it's clear to see why a lot of employees would be excited about this new law. Why would employers be excited about this law? And what are some of the things that they might be looking forward to as a result?
Well, they probably wouldn't be right off the bat because it's, it's
I
a
was
lot.
going to let you answer that.
Yeah, thanks for that one. It's a lot to do and it's a lot to know, and it to be non-compliant can be very expensive. So let's just get that out of the way. And employers, we understand that. But in other states, they have found that there's better employee loyalty with something like this. To go through to talk about somebody having a new baby. There's somebody that I helped recently. They had a new baby, and that changes your life anyhow, right? But the newborn had a heart condition, and that's a lot to go through.
Oh my
And
God.
this was really something that eased their mind. There are other things in place for women with maternity leave that if you're paying for it, voluntary short-term disability may or may not be voluntary, doesn't matter, but there is some payment there. But with PFL, it offers just another moment of relief, if you will. And that's one of the reasons behind it. So that employee is going through something different or maybe difficult. This plan is going to support them through that and give them some sort of wage while you as their employer are holding their job. And, your thought is you've trained that employee. They know the job. They know the culture. They know the company. When they're done with that leave, you want them to come back, right?
Sure. Right.
So with PFL, that's one of the main positive points to answer your question about an employer. They can expect that employee loyalty and for that employee to return to work. So it's reduced turnover, because with turnover comes recruiting and interviewing and training. And we also do respect the fact that it's hard to say, I'm a small business owner or a large, somebody's going to be away for 8 weeks. Well, you hope that employee that is already up to speed is coming back, and they have found that this promotes that return to work.
Great. That's a great answer. Thank you. The other question I wanted to ask is, like I said, we've actually talked a lot about it from the employee side today, which I think is really important because, as we talked about before, in 2017, it was all about what this means on the employer side.
Right.
But say that you happen to stumble upon this video and you're an employee at some company in New York State, and either you're pregnant or your wife is pregnant, and you're thinking, okay, we're going to have a baby this year. Let's say it's August. and I think I might be interested in applying for paid family leave. What do you do? How does an employee submit a claim, and really what do they need to do and what do they need to know?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think that it's important that we talk about it from the employee perspective, because nobody ever really does until they're already in the situation. So if you're an employee that you think that you have any type of PFL event, besides just having a child,
Right.
there's the other two buckets, a family member with a chronic illness or some type of military event. So what you would do is you would go to your employer, whomever that you would talk to about a benefit situation like this, and say, I'm interested in looking into PFL and taking PFL. And there's some things that they need to make you aware of. Your leave is PFL eligible and FMLA eligible, if applicable, and we help guide people in terms of understanding that. But most HR people, this is what they do. This is what they know. So they know
Sure.
when to say that. But the real thing is they have to understand their statement of rights, if you will. There is a one-pager that the employee must get, and they need to read through that to understand really the nuts and bolts of PFL, but also the claim packet. So there are forms that need to be filled out, 3 separate packets, and PFL 1 through PFL 5 are the different forms. So for some leaves, you're going to just need PFL 1 or 5. For others, you're going to need more. So the employer would essentially give them that claim packet, and maybe they're looking into a couple PFLs, a couple paid family leaves, give them all the packets, and the employee walks away with that information and completes it. So it's going to be filling in information. It's going to be gathering supporting documentation, like a birth certificate, for example, or if somebody is sick in your family, HIPAA, authorization in terms of talking to that relative's doctor and getting them to fill out stuff within PFL, within that claim packet. You then have to give it back to your employer. They have to fill out a piece. They have 3 business days to do so, to fill out their part. Then they give it back to the employee. Yeah, lots of rules. And it's the employee's responsibility to submit the claim to the insurance carrier. So that's important. And usually that's not how things go. You want your employer to help you, but really in the way that this law is written, it's the employee's responsibility to submit the claim to the insurance carrier. Once the insurance carrier gets it, again, they're the one deciding yay or nay, not the employer, the insurance company. So when they get your packet, it needs to be everything that's required. And if you filled it out properly and you gave them everything that they needed, the clock starts there and they have 18 days to approve or deny the claim. And if it's approved, we've seen payments start immediately. So that's a good thing. And if it's denied, you'll be made aware of that. The employer will be made aware of that. And the employee does have time, 30 days to submit additional paperwork. Maybe they missed something, they do have a chance to submit again, but they need to wait and get the approval or the denial.
How long, let's say they're approved, how long after the qualifying event do they have to take all of the maximum of 8 weeks?
What do you mean?
So let's say my wife and I have a baby right now, and my claim is approved, and I know that I get up to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Do I have 8 weeks to take all those 8 weeks? Do I have 6 months to take all those 8 weeks?
Good question. It's 8 weeks in a 52-week rolling period. So
Got
the
it.
employer needs to be tracking that as well. So just if if CJ, when and if you take PFL, you can take it again. But there's a time frame in which you can do so, and there's different stipulations depending on the section that you're taking it for. So bonding with a baby, you can only do that within 1 year of birth, foster placement, or adoption.
Got it.
So you can't, somebody can't be bonding with a child now that's older. There's rules around it. So again, within 1 year of birth, foster placement, or adoption. So even though the law went into effect 1/1/2018, if somebody had a baby or there was a foster placement or adoption in 2017, that would constitute PFL for bonding in 2018 because it's within that 1 year time frame.
So they won't pay me to take leave to go bond with my 21-year-old
Right.
on her 21st birthday.
Right. They also won't pay you to, not to joke about it, but if a family member is sick and we're here in New York and they're down in Florida, you need to be around each other. Okay. So you can't be, we joke, you can't be going to the beach to help somebody. And I flip flop that around. So if the family member is in New York, but then you're flying down to Florida to help them, that doesn't make much sense. So there's a lot of information that is required to be submitted to the insurance carrier. They'll be very thorough about reading through that and approving accordingly.
What is there anything else that we haven't really? I mean, I know this is kind of a dangerous question because there's just so much that we can go into.
Yeah.
So before we get into how bond can help, is there anything that you were
Yeah.
kind of hoping to share on either the employee or employer side?
Just to break it down, it's an insurance policy. The employee is paying for it. The insurance company will approve or deny. And it's not up to the employer to approve or deny, and it's not up for the employer to pay it. It's up to the employee, and it's not up to the employer to pay that 50% of the awarded benefit. It's up to the insurance carrier. So there's different people involved, and it's important to know that. Now, how bond can assist. We're a broker, we're a benefits consultant, and we're meant to be that liaison between you and the insurance carrier, or you and the doctor, you and the dentist, whatever you need help with at that time, you and the Affordable Care Act. There's a lot of things that we advise on. So with paid family leave, I'd say right now, it's just a lot of questions. And we'll do different seminars face-to-face and in different areas of the state of New York where we're educating and we're saying, here's the law. We all kind of get that, but let's talk about real life examples, and that's important. So we'll do exercises like that, but employers are welcome to reach out to us at any time and just run the questions by us. And we'll do our best to answer that and support you along the way in making sure that you are compliant with PFL. So a lot of times I'm sitting down with employers that haven't quite worked with us yet, and I'm saying, let's walk through your PFL practices. What do you have on file? Do you know when to give the statement of rights? Do you know that there's 3 different packets, and some of them are 11 pages long and some of them are 13 pages long? So we'll just help just bring clarity overall, and that makes it easier for everybody to reap the benefits of the benefit.
Yeah, that's great. Oh my gosh. Kristine, I can't thank you enough for being on our show, especially the inaugural episode of
exciting.
PeopleWork. This is super exciting.
Yeah.
You've added a ton of value in helping illuminate paid family leave now that the dust has settled, even though we're really only getting started with that actual rollout and compliance with the law, but you really added a lot of value on the employer and employee side, and I really, really appreciate you being here. We will provide some links that people can follow to learn more about what you guys do and how you can help, especially with paid family leave. And aside from that, like I said, I really appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, CJ. This is great.